afternoon. I'm Chair Sue Oliva, and I'd like to welcome you to the November 2024 Historic Resources Commission meeting. HRC is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes, the City of Asheville's Unified Development Ordinance, and Buncombe County Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for certificates of appropriateness for alterations, demolitions, new construction, and other work within historic districts, or for the alteration and demolition of historic landmarks and other duties, including preliminary review of subdivisions as specified in the ordinance for the HRC. I will now ask commission members and staff to introduce themselves.
Cecil Holt.
Will Hornaday from Albemarle Park.
Sue Oliva, historian.
Sarah Gross, anthropologist and archaeologist. Shannon Watkins, real estate broker.
Thank you. We will now consider the minutes from the September meeting of the HRC. The minutes include findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any corrections?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from September 2024 HRC.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We will now begin the evidentiary hearings for the items listed on the agenda. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the guidelines and standards of the specific historic district for that application. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant guidelines to the facts. The commissioners in voting for an item will not have a fixed opinion, not susceptible to change, have a conflict of interest, have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. This meeting is open to the public, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment or testimony regarding the proposal. So those of you that are going to speak, would you please come forward and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness of preliminary subdivision approval for the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Now we will move into our first public hearing item.
Thank you, Chair Oliva, members of the commission. I just want to say first, thank you all for making time to be here today. I know that everyone has quite a bit going on in their respective lives, so we appreciate you. Getting this meeting taken care of will be a help for our community, so we appreciate it. And also just a housekeeping note that we all just realized we had some additional water damage in this room, so that's why there's like kind of plaster speckly stuff on the chairs and some places along the walls. So that is just a flag to note to you all. And then also that you might notice there's a little bit of a hiss. The speakers got damaged in here, so I might just encourage you to speak extra loud into the mic today, in case it's hard to hear folks over that. But the good news is that there's no issue with the sound in our live stream. They're not connected. So, all right. So our first item is for 30 Elizabeth Place / 1 Woodlawn Avenue. This application is for preliminary subdivision approval. This property is located in the corner of Bishop Place and Woodlawn Avenue, and backs up to the primary structure, fronts on Woodlawn, and then the rear of the structure is fronting on Elizabeth Place. So the proposed subdivision would split the .21 acre parcel into a new .125 acre parcel with the existing primary and accessory structures and a new vacant tenth of an acre parcel, just over a tenth of an acre. If you'll note in the aerial, well, show you the subdivision first. This is what the subdivision looks like. If you'll note in the aerial, you can see that along that is Chestnut Street, that's to the south of this. And then backing up along Elizabeth Place, you'll see that those three structures kind of in that corner, they're tucked pretty tightly up to the street. And I think easily if this lot is subdivided that someone could build in a manner that's consistent with those adjacent properties there. So I'm not noting any concerns about the subdivision, but I am happy to answer questions if you all have any.
Any questions for Alex? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to come forward?
Thank you. My name's Sean Mack. I'm a friend and the real estate broker for Kathleen McLaughlin, the property owner. She just asked me to be here in her place. She's not in town. She's staying out of state right now. So I'm just really here to answer any questions that y'all need to have answered and to support her. My understanding is she's going to, once the subdivision's completed, she's going to sell the home and retain the vacant lot for later use, potentially, or later sale. That's all I've got.
Any questions for the applicant?
So she understands that like anything that she builds in the future will probably need to, comply with the.
Oh, yeah, yeah, 100%. And she's still not convinced whether she's going to keep it and build or sell it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor for public comment. I'm going to close the floor for public comment.
I have no comments. I think that follow staff's direction on this as well.
Same. Now,
Then, Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application, 4 pages, Exhibit B, proposed plat, and the commissioner's actual inspection and review of the property, I move that this commission approve the preliminary subdivision approval based on the following. 1, that the application is for subdivision of existing .21 acre parcel into one new 1.25 acre parcel containing existing primary and accessory structures and one new .103 acre vacant parcel. 2, that the guidelines for new construction primary structures found on pages 92-93 in the Montford Historic Design Review Standards adopted April 14, 2010 and amended December 14, 2016, and UDO section 715.1 were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, subdivision of lots would allow for new development features at a minimum to be built in a manner that is congruous with the special character of the historic district as it relates to the building setbacks, orientation, and consistency with the historic development pattern. B, new lot with existing structure will retain its congruency with the historic pattern in terms of building orientation, setback, retention of green space, and spacing between structures. Number 4, that the actions and improvements proposed in this application before us as a preliminary subdivision approval are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Second.
all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for reasons set forth therein, I move that a preliminary subdivision approval be issued with
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, moving on to second item is for 30 Young Street. This application is for a one-story, 441 square foot addition. This house is a little bit unique in that it is facing sideways and not facing the street like most primary structures in Montford. So just to orient you, this on the top left is the parcel map showing where the parcel is located. It's a flag lot, so the flag touches Chestnut Street, the picture on the top is current day Google Street View image, and I just included the one below is from 2008, but just so you can kind of get a clearer view of the house without the vegetation and stuff in front of it. And then on the bottom right is the 1951 Sanborn map, so you can see that the house was turned that way originally with the porch facing the side. You can also tell from that footprint, I don't think I included the image from the parcel, the property card, but you can see that there was a little L added on to the very back, though that's like the northwest corner. To go back to the Sanborn map, it was, just squared off on the end, and now it's got that little L. And so just some more photos. The left photo is looking straight on at the south or front elevation. And then the photo top right is looking at the little area where the addition is proposed. And then just for context, the photo on the bottom right is to show the house looking at it from the street on the other side. So these are existing and proposed elevation drawings. So on the left-hand side, you're looking at I'm gonna just call it the front elevation. You're looking at the front elevation. It will just be kind of popped out from in that little corner. And then kind of the same thing on the west-facing side, but it will just obviously have that side-facing gable and roof. So I did note just a couple of questions. One, just FYI, there are revised window specifications in the packet. They've submitted wood window specifications for double-hung windows. I did want to get some clarification on from the applicant on the existing windows and whether or not they are original to the structure or historic, and if there's any option to reuse them. If so, if not, in the past, the commission has asked the applicant to retain and preserve windows on site so that they could potentially be reused in the future. And then we also need, a little bit hard to tell just from the lightness of the photo, the way it's showing in the slide deck, but the addition on the west side has a row of either awning or, I'm assuming, casement windows since they're for light, but we just need the specs for those windows as well. We don't have that included. And then we also need the door specifications for the new pedestrian door on that side. Let's see. So that's what's proposed for the building. And then there's some site work that's proposed. So on the left is existing site plan. You'll note that, I'll try to go back and forth between these slides a little bit. If you visited the property, you could see that there was a walkway that comes down into the street pretty much, and it's like gravel with stepping stones. It looks like that goes up to the front entry of the house from that set of steps. And the picture on the bottom left is a area that's retaining wall existing on the site. So to go back to this slide, they are proposing a fair amount of site work. They are proposing they've got some drainage issues from the grade comes down from Chestnut Street towards this house. So I totally understand the need to correct some of the drainage problems, but I'm a little bit concerned about what they're proposing is, I might actually navigate to this drawing by itself. easier to see. Load. So there would be a new set of steps that would, or the steps would be rebuilt out of stone coming off of the street, and then there would be a wall.
Enlarge it a little bit.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah.
So there would be essentially the stairs would be replaced, and then they would install the permeable paver area that would kind of extend along the front
The
of the
stairs
house.
are being replaced coming off that parking next to the house?
Right, yeah.
Or the parking lot, just,
Oh, there's a proposed set of steps
I see.
down,
I just wondered which one you were.
yeah, sorry, the steps coming off of Young Street. That's where, I'm sorry, that's where I started, was just,
At the house.
yep. Yep, so they're gonna replace the wall and the steps there with new retaining wall, new stone retaining wall and steps. And then they wanna, replace the, that front walkway with a new area of paver walkway and patio. And then, just so I don't forget, they are proposing to replace the driveway, the little short asphalt driveway, with permeable pavers as well. And so then, moving south, you can see like what's identified as retaining wall that would kind of wrap around that patio, and within that there would be a French drain, and then above the wall there would be another French drain, and then wood post and wire fencing above that, and then another French drain and steps kind of going through that little terraced area, if you will, and then moving all the way south where I think you were thinking I was starting, Commissioner Hornaday, is the existing retaining wall and stone stairs that are down at the end of the flagpole, if you will, at the southern end of the lot.
Those are existing.
I think so. I'll let the applicant confirm. So, this, just as an FYI, we received this rendering, the site rendering, yesterday, which it does help a little bit, provide some illustration of what it would look like. My concern is, that's tied to this, is it's kind of unusual for a house in Mofford to have like a patio that wraps the front. I mean, this is a little bit weird because it's side facing. So my thought was, if it, like from a naturalized area, or kind of what would be more consistent with Mofford, if the walkway portion where it approaches the front entry could be just grass in the walkway, like would be kind of normal and like what's there, and then maybe beyond that front, like covered porch, that could be the section of patio, which it mostly is, but just kind of minimizing that amount of patio paved area at the front elevation, I think would be more consistent with Montford. This is a little more built out, like something you might find in a rear yard. Although I will say that I, of course, understand that this is all the yard that they have to work with, and so it's kind of a balance here of usable space. I did note that you guys can propose, or you can approve paving materials on a case-by-case basis. However, walkways are, say, I believe they say they don't specify that pavers. I think it's just for like parking area paving is where you're allowed to vary the materials. So that just as an FYI on that. I don't necessarily have any concerns about, I mean, the steps are so deteriorated right now, it's a little hard to tell like what in the world that would have been originally. So I realize that they need to be repaired in some way. I have seen these like kind of snap-in stone steps. The commission approved these, but mostly new construction projects or like rear yard landscaping. Not necessarily flagging it as a concern. It just, I think just making sure that you all think that the retaining wall and the steps are consistent with the character of Montford. And then I did note that the fence as shown is not consistent with the standards since top and bottom rails aren't allowed, so that will need to be amended. And then also, we do need, in addition to the window specifications and door specifications I noted, we actually need the dimensions for the retaining walls and it, as well as the fencing. We don't have that. So those are things that I think are all fine for us to review administratively, but just to note those to you. So, any questions for me?
The land is getting cleared a little too for this kind of dives in right now.
Yeah, they're gonna have to excavate that. There's a
All the patio.
yeah,
up
there's
to the retaining wall.
yeah, there's. I mean, the grade. Let's see if I can.
Kind of see it.
Yeah, the grade. It's kind of gradual, but they're gonna have to excavate out a fair amount to put that retaining wall in there. Bless you. Okay, just wait a second until you. Yeah, sorry. That's okay. No worries. Any other questions for me, and then we can let the.
So you're, some of the questions that we're going to ask are those windows on the west and south getting reused?
Yeah, so there's, it's a little bit hard to tell because the trampoline's in front of them, but there's a couple, I think there's
Drawing
Six-
shows like
six
four
windows.
square. Yeah, that.
there's 5 existing windows. Thank you. So you're welcome. No, you're fine. You're welcome to use my slides, and then I've got your all your documents pulled up here too. They're just been relabeled because we have to split them all up. So if you need me to help you find anything, just
Okay.
let me know.
Hi. Hi, I'm Esme Dorff, owner of 30 Elm Street. And I'm here to get this project going. I can answer
Yeah.
some of the questions that
That'd be
y'all
great.
had. So, when it comes to the windows being reused, so, I don't know, so these windows here, so this is a double gang window, and those would, because that's where we would be doing the addition, we would be reusing those and kind of bringing them to the forefront. So they'd be almost in this exact same place as they are now.
10 feet further west.
Correct. North, they'd be on the,
That's the west side.
sorry,
of the
south,
house.
the south side, like it would be right, it would be put right here. Let's see. Okay, so as you can see here, I think this is the current, and then we would bring it forward over here, so this is now the addition. It's just hard to tell because it's taking the exact,
Mhm.
it's in the exact, so it's just more bringing it forward. So we would be reusing those
Okay.
for that, and we'd be reusing whatever windows that we can, to, to absolutely reuse them.
So the ones on the west side, the 3 windows.
So, these ones, I think we are also going to be using the windows that were, some of the windows that were already here. Okay. We do, I think these ones here, we would have to get new ones made, which would be based on the specifications, the wood, and they'd be made, custom made to fit and be exactly the same as, yeah.
So you're buying 4 windows that size-ish on that side that are going to be new.
correct.
And then
So
there's that
yes, we are
long-
going to be adding, so that it's two sets of the double gangs would be new. And that other set would be brought into the front or vice versa.
And the long.
The long
thin
ones, those would also be custom made. Those are,
So you're not going to
would-
use any of the 3 windows that are existing on that
I
elevation?
don't believe so.
So that's something that gets stored?
That's what the commission has stipulated on site, or do you know, like, what the, historic,
I mean, they definitely don't look, they look,
would?
yes, they're wood. All of our windows are wood.
So they
And-
match the rest of the windows?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
yes, so the standards say, retain and preserve historic windows,
Mhm.
allow windows to be removed for things like additions, construction and stuff, and then just.
They need to
retain
live
the-
there.
wherever we have space.
Absolutely.
So that if in the future everyone wants, or if you guys wanted to
Mhm.
install them somewhere else, or so
Absolutely.
we don't have a way to follow that around, but that's what we stipulated in the ordinance.
I have a warehouse I can store them in, so. And then the specifications for the 4 light windows, which is the longer ones over here, including the trim, is about 2.5 feet high by 7.6, 7 feet 6 inches wide.
You're getting a new door that you're going to
Yes.
send the info to Alex on.
Yes, I thought I had already sent that, but I can, oh no, it is a wood door. Okay, I did it out in my sheet. It is wood, though, and it would be in the same style of the other doors that are found in the home, which are also historic.
I think she just needs to get a copy of that.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
description
absolutely.
on that to put in her file.
And I have the door specifications, 3 foot wide by 7 feet high, again, falling in line with the rest of the doors. And
And the fence,
so it's hard to tell, but we did in the rendering. So we do have the picture there with the top rail, with the horizontal. That was just an image for reference. But here, it's hard to tell. There are no horizontal lines there. So, and I do understand that we need to put it, 4 foot back. So that would be definitely something that we would do. And I do have the approximate dimensions for the retaining walls, which was also asked. Does that help now, or do you want to wait for that?
What's the height? Those things. Or ish.
36 inches.
So it'd be 7 feet in all with the 4 foot fence, 3 feet high for the retaining wall. And that fence is on the property?
That would be on the property. We're talking about the cow panel fence?
Yeah,
Okay,
the drawing.
yeah.
So fence is fine, it's cow panel, which is somewhere else. What's your question, Mike?
I was just pointing that out, that that's part of the reason for the site work,
Oh,
to
yeah.
correct some drainage issues.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell from these pictures. Maybe I can find it here.
how did this come through the storm? Do you have a lot of, was there a lot of water coming through?
In the front, yeah, I mean, it was a pond for quite a while. And I mean, we've been having drainage issues like that for, ever since we've been in the home. We've been in there since 2005. 2005, 2015, sorry.
The flag part of your lot, are those steps that are painted there? I think that secret.
No, so, that is in the proposed. Are you talking about right here?
Correct.
Yeah, so that is in the proposed, because right now it's just a cement pad, and then it just goes into the slope going down. That, we walk down and then, around here currently, and, one of the challenges, and Alex also mentioned it, is just the way that this home has been subdivided. Even this land here, where there is currently a house, that all belonged to, that house at one point. So there was all of this green space. It was
You
completely.
face Chestnut back.
Yes, yeah. And so in the subdivision, I mean, the current owner of the next door neighbor house has plenty of green space. We just really don't have that much. And when we come out of our house, pretty quickly, we've got slope. So we have no flat usable space. You go a little bit to the right and it's like even steeper up. We have a growing family and it makes it hard to, we just can't really use the space in a way that, we are, all of this here is gonna be also, green space that we're keeping that way.
Is there
Yes.
any tree removal in this?
Not at this time, no. No, I mean, we have trees in the front of our house currently.
They just meant back in the area
No.
where, or the flat.
No, I mean, it's all just like bare land and, some grass, but on a pretty steep slope. Again, which you can't really see from the pictures here. You can kind of see it up here a little bit. Where it's coming up. It's not as big as it looks. I think it might seem like there's a lot of stone and whatnot. Also, I do want to specify that in terms of the stone wall, we'll be using approved stone wall that is congruent with the rest of Montford. So I just wanted to point that out. But it's not that much space. It looks a lot more than it really is. We do have some grass here that we're keeping here. We've got flower beds over here, flower beds all along here, as well as here along the side. So I think, it's really a minimum of livable space in a property that, is pre-existing, non-congruent, or with other properties in the area. It is unique in that sense.
Could you give Alex a sample or a picture of the pavement? It's in there?
It's on the bottom left.
The driveway.
I think it's for all of you.
So it's the same. So all Alex needs is this door.
She needs the window specs,
Specifics on the
the
door.
dimensions, and the dimensions for fencing, right?
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Everything's up on clarification of existing.
Okay, so you just have 4 things to get to Alex.
So I have to get, okay, so I have to get it to
Yeah,
you.
they'll just be conditioned on your approval. So once, right now, follow up with you on the letter, and then your special.
And that'll be, you'll have that in the email?
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for the applicant? Thank you. Thank you. I'll open the floor for public comment. Or close the floor for public comment. Okay. Any other troops? It's quite.
They're not prepared to make a motion.
Sorry, I do have a question. Like maybe this is a question for you, just thinking of it. Like, these, like the stone steps that are in the pictures aren't necessarily lining up with the rendering that's up there. Like, it looks like there's extra like papers or stones put under each step, but like all the pictures indicate that it would just be like one solid stone on the step.
I'm assuming it's gonna look like the photo and not the rendering, is that correct? It's just there, she mentioned that there's like this, the steps in the
Come up.
rendering, like, is like you have a flat cap on the steps, you know what I mean? Versus the snap-in stone or whatever this it is in the picture, and so I think, are you just asking for clarification on which
Can you
is
come up?
proposed?
So.
I
on
guess,
the-
is it gonna look like the picture that's on the left or the rendering?
On the left.
I think on the left, yeah.
Okay.
Full stone.
There might have
For
been
all
some like
stone.
artistic,
Yeah.
Went to town with it.
Yeah.
Why stop when there was a big white space,
Right.
right?
Your vantage point is perfect.
Yeah,
You
did a
know,
good job, yeah,
everything in
yeah,
there,
yeah.
right?
All right, great, thanks so much. Anybody else?
And I mean, I did look at what Alex said about the walkways thing. It does say like you can use bricks, stones, or grass or gravel, but it doesn't necessarily say you can use pavers, but I don't know how. Because I don't know if this is necessarily considered a walkway versus like a porch.
I mean, I think it is a walkway now that's going out to the front entry, and that's what I was trying to say, is that that's what's typical in Walker for front entry, is there's a walkway that connects
Right.
to the driveway or to the street. And so if that section can at least be maybe thought of a little differently, like the patio is beyond, and then the walkway is maybe just like flagstone or something set into the ground, so that it still kind of achieves the same, sort of the same purpose, but doesn't feel like it's an extension of the patio and all the way out to the steps versus a walkway, if that makes sense.
Delineate the path from different trees.
Well, just
Yeah, she's
using,
asking.
using a walkway material that's meets the standards, so if it's stone, that might look most consistent with this, or gravel or whatever they want to use, and then, and that coming up to the front entry stair, and then beyond that is the paver area, because that's to me, starts to become more of the side rear yard once you get past the front entry. And I understand, like I was saying, that they want usual outdoor space to enjoy, so, would it be helpful if we pulled a site plan? for that? So there's the existing, you can see, going up to the porch. And then proposed, and so what I'm saying is just coming up to that front entryway, and then beyond that, if you all,
What you're putting in.
sorry, if beyond, like, to the west of the front entry porch
Okay,
is where I think the patio area is okay,
Right.
but the area extending from the steps up to the front entry, I think should be more like a traditional walkway in Montford, and meet the standards for walkways, personally.
To that point, are there steps going to the new addition door, or is that just steps in the grass?
That's a good question. What does the door exit out onto? The new door?
The new door is just right here. There's no door, like the only two doors that we have are the front door and a back door here. So the new door would be here, just around here in the addition, and would just come out to this now, like
No
more grassy.
stone,
No,
paving,
just
no
all grass.
sidewalk.
Just walk onto the grass.
Yeah.
You don't want like a concrete
A
landing
landing.
there or something?
Stone
Yeah, I mean, maybe? I don't know, I hadn't really thought about that part.
Well, that's something you can amend if you wanted to. That's possibly amendment if you think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to have like a little stepping stone
Mm.
coming out of the door that connects.
Right,
to the
right, right.
It's
patio.
not right on, yeah, especially if it's wet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, part of the reason why we have that is just also for that like safety reason, to be able to exit the back of the house. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, what did we just, was there no movement on dedicated pathway?
Yeah, can you come back up?
Well, I think it wasn't with regard to them. Commission.
Right to us, okay. If we,
I mean, I guess, Alex, are you saying, so when you go up these stone stairs, sorry, I'm not interrupting you, head around it. Like, you're saying like almost a 3-4 foot area that's just the stones in grass that leads to the semi-permeable pavers?
Let's look at the picture of what's there. If we can. So right now you can see how it comes, that's more than 5 feet, that's probably 10, 15 feet, I don't think it's,
To the porch.
yeah. I mean, I'm guesstimating, that porch is definitely longer than 5 feet, so. We're talking about, I think it looks shorter in the site plan than it actually, that distance looks shorter in the site plan than it actually is. Or maybe not, I mean, it's probably 15, 20 feet. So I'm just saying, I think it's a walkway, I think front entries are important in Montford. I think walkway is part of what defines a front entry in Montford.
right,
And so I think making it feel more like a patio is, to me, having the same material as the patio makes it then part of the patio. And also the standards for walkways don't say that pavers are an appropriate material for walkways. So I'm just saying, I think that one way that maybe there's a meeting where they might like aesthetically work together and functionally work together is if it's, you know, flagstone or something that does meet the standards, flagstone or like gravel with edging or something that does meet the standards and is more like a standard walkway. It doesn't have to be necessarily in a different footprint or anything, but just
Yeah.
curving around to the front entry and then connecting to that then the paver area is to the west of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I mean, to me, at first I didn't really like feel a certain way about this or take an opinion about it, but then once I really thought about it, even though this house is side facing, it does still have a front entryway, and I think that's important to maintain kind of that traditional relationship of front entryways in Montford, and that the walkways are kind of one of the only ways that happens in Montford. So
right, so it says,
That's off of Young Street, is that right? But then Young Street is a private street.
sure, it's a private street, but the house still has a front entryway. So
It's a private street.
yeah.
it says walkways may be brick, exposed, or embedded aggregate, stone, or hand-tooled and edge-tinted concrete.
Right.
So.
driveway, they can use something that they think will match it from those options.
And then if they amend their hours, can approve that.
Yeah, it would just be revising, and if they don't want to make that decision today, we can,
Okay, so we can, okay, let's do that. All right, back to the sound.
But I think they will need to say that they're okay
Which
with material for that session.
Okay. All right, well, we can have it in there.
Do you want to,
That was meant to amend the material for the sidewalk.
and do you understand what we're saying
Come on up to the
or where it is?
Yeah.
Sure, what I'm hearing is that from the stairs coming to the, to the front door or to the front of the porch, there needs to be a differentiating factor between the rest of the area and the pavers and more of
So it's
a more,
a walkway.
it's a more of a walkway situation.
You could do gravel or whatever other materials.
Yeah, you have choice.
Okay.
Several choices.
I'm wondering, the fact that it is a private road, does that have any impact on, you know, what we're trying to do?
Standards don't really differentiate.
Yeah, they don't, and it's still a historic community,
Mhm.
so we wanted to stay within what is the usual. and
Understood.
That's why. All right.
Well, and I think if you want to change like the whole, if you want to do the pavers for like like the other area, that's fine. But if you even wanted to keep the congruency from the walkway of like whatever you choose to do there and just keep it across, I mean, that's always an option too. I don't know if that's the aesthetic you would even go for, depending on the options. I think there's like 6 different options, but
If you're saying, if we wanted to take what we're using for the walkway for the rest of the area.
just if you wanted to keep the congruency. But I think the main idea is that at least from the stairway to the front porch, that little,
Yeah. But there is a
There's
desert.
a little bit of delineation. You still have a flat space there.
Yeah, that's definitely an important aspect for me, so that it's really usable and safer and not just so close, it's, you know, to right in our,
Yeah, no, I.
coming out of
yeah.
our front door, and it's like, there really isn't that much to use there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion. Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application and photographs, 8 pages, Exhibit B, project description, 2 pages, Exhibit C, material specifications, Exhibit D, existing and proposed site plans, 3 pages, with perfect vanishing point. Exhibit F, existing and proposed floor plans, 2 pages. Exhibit G, 1951 sandboard insurance map. Exhibit H, site drawings, received November 12th, 2024. Exhibit I, window specification, 10 pages, received November 12th, 2024. In the commission's actual inspection or review of the subject property by all members, accepting. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. One, that the application is to construct a 1-story, 441 square foot addition to the west elevation. Addition will have painted wood, lap siding, and dark gray asphalt shingle roof matching existing. 2 existing windows will be reused on addition. Install new install. New windows will be Marvin wood, double hung, 6/6, and 4 light wood, actual divided light. New door will be wood. New door will be wood. 6/6, actual divided light on existing portion of west elevation. Site work including replacement of existing front walkway and gravel area with material to be determined. Construct permeable paver patio and planting beds. Replacement of existing asphalt driveway with permeable pavers. Construction of multiple stone retaining walls throughout site. Installation of 2 sections of maximum 4-foot tall wood posts and wire fencing, and installation of multiple French drains. All work to be completed in accordance with approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals are required by law and must be obtained before this work may commence. That the guidelines for
Sorry.
okay. Yeah.
Hey, crap. Hey, can you, it's on the staff report. Staff report.
Yeah.
Friends telling me I have to do something special to copy paste.
Sorry. German side, that, the standards from, for landscaping and trees found on pages 40, 41, fences and walls on pages 36, 37, walkways, driveways, and off-street parking on pages 50 to 51, windows and doors from pages 84, 85, and additions on pages 88, 89 from the Montford standard historic standards adopted April 14, 2010 and amended December 11, 2019 were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet this is subdivision. It's subdivision under, when I come back to the motion, or do I stay on the staff report?
Number 3 on his.
Oh, it's still there. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. 1, new addition is cited as inconspicuously as possible in the rear-facing elevation where character-defining features are not damaged, destroyed, or obscured. 2, addition will be inset from the rear building corners to differentiate from the existing building and reduce visibility. 3, addition is designed to be compatible with the existing building in height, massing, roof form, and pitch. 4, addition is limited in scale and size and does not overpower the site or substantially alter the site's proportions
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Based upon the foregoing findings and the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. One, windows and door specifications will be submitted for staff review and approval. Two, dimension drawings for fence and retaining walls will be submitted for staff approval. And three, retention of the historic windows on site or nearby.
I'm sorry, and there's another one.
And then another
On the
one.
walkway.
And for walkway material, we differentiated, and that could be through staff approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Thank y'all.
All right, so I don't have a slide deck for our other business items tonight, but they are both important. So hopefully, I'm sure you probably did not all have time to read my staff report for the first other business item, which is asking you all to consider making an addendum to the local historic district and landmark design standards. So just to give you my summary, as noted in the staff report, that the report is meant to explain to you all our staff efforts to expedite permit review during this time. And this is, of course, in response to impacts from the hurricane. Per UDO Section 7-5-11, applications for minor work CAs can be reviewed and approved administratively, and those are for projects in which the visual character of the structure or grounds is not substantially changed. This is consistent, our ordinance is consistent with what the state statute dictates as far as major and minor work scopes go. But as you all are aware, all of our historic district design standards have those buckets organized a little differently. So like what might be major work in Albemarle Park might not be so in St. Dunstan's. And so and we also recognize that during this time, we're probably going to see things that we would ordinarily bring to you, things like window and door replacement in Biltmore Village, where things are damaged beyond repair, where we feel like staff, as long as we have the right documentation to support the replacement, we feel like staff can comfortably approve those things during this time, even in normal times where we wouldn't see this type of environment where we would say, oh, you need to replace a window or door. We would bring that to you all. So for those two reasons, we're asking, and that's just one example of something that might ordinarily be a major work outside of this time frame. But for those two general reasons, we're asking you to consider adopting this addendum that would be operational during declared states of emergency, where you are authorizing staff basically to review as much under administrative review as possible. And just to give you a little bit of context, the review turnaround for minor works is way faster. We're usually like 7 business days might be our average, versus major work review, which takes about 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer, as you all know. And what we don't want to do is have folks in Biltmore Village and elsewhere waiting to come to you to get their businesses reopened and things back online. So, but this is with exceptions, and this is also, I will note, so like there's some things listed out here that are exceptions: new construction of primary structures, accessory structures, and additions, demolition or relocation of historic structures, replacement of architectural features where there will be a change from the material or the original, or change from the original material, fences in front yards in Montford and Albemarle Park, solar panels on portions of roof or other areas facing rights of way, and any other scope that staff determines will have a substantial visual impact or alters historic character. And that's not really different from how we function today. If we get a minor work that is outside of something we feel like we can approve, or we have, we think it's a questionable improvement that maybe would alter the character, we would bring that to you anyway, so that's not really that different. So that's what that is. We're asking you to consider adopting this addendum, and it would be applicable to all the local district design standards. While I did note landmark in my staff report, the Secretary of the Interior standards, which we use to apply to local landmarks, they don't delineate they don't say anything about what's major and minor work. So it's not really necessary to attach this as an addendum to those, but we will attach it as an addendum to the other standards. And again, just during declared states of emergency is what we're looking at. And maybe long-term, we are looking at kind of making it a little more consistent across districts, but that also is a little tricky too. It just kind of depends on, what that district wants. So tackle that at a later date. Once the state of emergency has been lifted, then we'll resume our normal things. I guess we could theoretically, Janice, I don't know, we could, knowing.
I have no idea how long this is.
And is that just applications that are related to storm damage, or is it applications that could come in after storm damage?
Honestly, I think it's mostly what we're asking for are things related to storm repair, because there's probably not going to be too many people in Montford that are coming to us with we had one, I think, application that's in review where they had a vinyl window that was damaged by a tree. And so, that's something that we feel like, well, the new unit's going to be wood. So I don't, if somebody came to us and said, I want to replace all my windows in my house in Montford right now or wherever else, and it wasn't to do with Helene, we would definitely bring that to you also. I think but to your point, we don't know how long the declared state of emergency is going to be, and maybe this is something that we need to look at longer term, but I kind of doubt it.
I think they just extended it to March, and that's usually how they'll do it. They'll state when it ends. So the way it's written is during declared states of emergency. I don't know if we need to make it a little more precise and say only things that are related to requests that are related to the impacts of Hurricane Milton. So only something that came in, and maybe that's how you mentioned it. You're saying all scopes of work to be reviewed, all scopes of work to be reviewed administratively during declared states of emergency. But we're not saying that those requests are necessarily related to emergency.
We can add that in the following
Yeah.
specific exception, saying non-Helene related major work items or something like that. I don't know how we want to word it.
I just didn't know if that's how I originally read it, to only mean ones that were related to requests that were.
that was the intent, because otherwise we wouldn't be operating this way. We're really trying to provide relief to those impacted by the storm. So, okay, to be honest, just to give you all a little bit of the lay of the land so far, I guess I don't even know. Well, we're almost 2 months out, not quite, but we're starting to see some major work application requests, but weirdly they are not for hurricane stuff. They're for additions and new construction and other things, and so people are ready to go with their other things. And I think, and I know that the folks from Biltmore Village are here that may want to chime in with what some on the ground there, but most of the folks that I've met with in the village, like if they've had a structural engineer, the buildings are in decent shape, and a lot of what we're going to be seeing is repair work. And it's like, a lot of the buildings are masonry, so that's good. I even talked to the Bohemian Hotel contractor yesterday, and they had minimal exterior damage, even though that building's only like 15 years old. The one-story commercial buildings like the Hardee's and the McDonald's are in rough shape, of course, and I'm sure the gas station is too, that's in between them, although I haven't heard from those folks. The Starbucks is no longer, there's been stuff that was torn down. And so just FYI, if you go through there, one thing that happened right out of the gate was, that I was unaware of, is that there's an exception for emergency permitting for scopes of work that were under $40,000 and non-structural. So there were a lot of permits that I just didn't see. I don't know how a whole Starbucks gets demolished under $40,000, but whatever. I guess at least it was only a 10-year-old building. I mean, I feel bad for those people, but anyway, so we've been trying to like rein that back in and try to get our hands around, because our permitting staff and our development services staff didn't realize that CAs are still required for exterior work, even if the scope doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. And so, of course, it's probably going to cost something. But anyway, so we're that's just a little bit of an update to let you know that we're still trying to get our arms around all of this, but it's starting to come together. I feel like from our working with like our permitting staff and our development services staff on processes and sharing information on what our flood requirements are and making that really clear. And just as an FYI, in case you don't know this, under FEMA requirements, buildings that are in designated districts, whether they're local or national register, or otherwise have been determined to be eligible for listing in the National Register, those buildings are all eligible for, they don't have to meet like the full compliance under our flood standards. And the way we have that worked out in our ordinance is through the variance process. So they would then go to the Board of Adjustment, like if you have a historic property and you need some relief from our flood standards, then you have to, basically the requirement tells you that you have to the extent possible, flood-proof or otherwise meet our flood ordinance without harming the historic character of the building. So we're probably going to be seeing a lot of that here in the near future of Board of Adjustment cases related to properties in Biltmore Village and Rad, and probably some others, although there's not a ton of stuff that's been determined to be eligible. I think there's a lot of stuff that have been surveyed along Swananoa River Road, but that's just where my brain has been living. I'm sure I'm not thinking of all the other places that we might see things from, but just as an FYI on that note. But I think we are maybe not going to meet in December. We haven't gotten 100% clear on that. We should know that within the next week, though, because we have our advertising requirements for our December meeting are coming up. But I think that it might be timing-wise okay, because I think we might see some major work stuff from Biltmore Village populate for January or February, depending on what their flood requirements are for rebuilding, and that's specifically for like McDonald's, Hardee's, that stuff down there. I don't know, and to go back to this request, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of major work requests for the historic buildings down there, because there's a lot we can permit under minor work as far as, because everybody's just repairing with like for like. So, and we have just also as another FYI that's been kind of great is to connect with Michael Logan, who has been here multiple times to talk to you all about historic window restoration. He's working with a fair amount of folks down in the village to do restoration work on those windows, and a lot of them were in really good shape that he had looked at, which is good news. They just obviously, I know the old buildings are tough old buildings, so that's the good news. It was definitely the newer buildings that had the most damage. So I'll stop there because I know we have folks that want to chime in. Thanks.
No, this isn't quasi-judicial, but just introduce yourself for the people at home.
Good evening, Honorable Commission and members. I'm a former HRC Commissioner myself. It's been some time since I was on the board, but just wanted to lend my voice in support of the agenda item Alex was just discussing with you all. I'm very active in Biltmore Village. In fact, I just left there a few minutes before I arrived here. So I would encourage you all to take into serious consideration anything to expedite the recovery efforts that are underway, as well as the rebuilding of Biltmore Village. Time is of the essence in order to preserve these buildings. Time is of the essence in order to preserve these businesses that operate within them. And time is of the essence for this economic hub of our community to allow for quick, efficient review of the structures and the proposals that are reasonable in nature, and defer to experienced staff who's been leading this effort for a number of years in Alex's case, and others who I'm sure are still lending their assistance from 2004. When I heard the discussion about limiting the scope of review solely to acts related to the hurricane that tends, or other states of emergency that may arise in the future, that does make sense to kind of relate the expedited process to those seriously affected areas. And to the extent that it's allowed by state statutes and otherwise, I would extend that for some period of time, such as 180 days or something of that nature, after the state of emergency has been ceased, I guess would be the terminology there. And the thinking is that in this particular instance, and who knows what the future may hold for us, is that the first 30 days or so were essentially a search and rescue and mitigation effort. The second 30 days or so have now been a serious assessment and furtherance of our recovery efforts. And at some point in the next 2 to 3 months, depending on a case-by-case basis, there may have to be a series of engineers brought in or other professionals, and suddenly we could be in March in some instances, and then be delayed even further toward the reopening and preservation of these businesses. So if there was some allowance in state law to give a tail period of, say, 180 days after that March date, I would lend my full support to that, and I'm sure that the other merchants in Biltmore Village and elsewhere would share that opinion. And we are grateful for staffs reaching out to us and working with us already in this instance, even as little as trying to work on getting paint codes updated, which those little things can lead to weeks-long projects for people. So we would love to see that happen. And as I understood it, the staff always has the ability to kick the can down the road to you all and let you render your opinion where necessary. So those are my thoughts on the matter. Benjamin Mitchell.
Benjamin, how much water was in there? I mean, we've
I was there the entire time and wrote it out in the Roost Chris building, which fortunately stayed dry. The meter there at Moe's Barbecue, not Moe's Barbecue, Moe's Southwestern Grill, is a national NCGS or NOAA, one of those meters. It registered about 26.2 feet, I believe. And from my understanding, the historic high prior to that was in 2004 at roughly 21 feet. And some folks were able to clear out inventory and so forth prior to the event, and it was just breathtaking to observe. So I was there the whole time.
So at this point, how much time is it going to take you? Let's say you got started before March. Are you looking at like 3 or 4? This is just
Generally speaking, I couldn't bind anyone really on that sort of timeline. It's a case-by-case basis,
Right.
More on the outer rings of the village or fringe or what have you. Those properties in many instances were minor affected in so much as 6 to 8 inches of mud, maybe deemed minor damage. Other buildings have been completely gutted to studs, already dried out, sanitized, and then cleaned further. And I believe on the Sunday after the storm, we had professionals out surveying the realm and then getting to work that following Monday. So there are others who maybe don't have the resources available to them, financially or otherwise, insurance, what have you, that may tend to run a little behind some of us. But for the most part, we're hearing positive outlooks, and folks seem to be on a path forward. And there are exceptions to that, of course, but the core of the village seems to be making progress rapidly, and anything we can do to expedite that would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, and everyone's got their own pace and scope, and contractors and things that they're willing to pay or unable to or whatever, and overtime and all of that factors into everything. But there's other issues that involve the city that have been frustrating, to say the least, but we're making progress on those fronts too. And I think at the end of the day, reason will prevail, and we'll get this area of town back up and running very soon.
Great, thanks so much.
Thanks for
Thank
all your work.
Thank
down
you,
there.
yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
Then, I'm sorry, real quick, I haven't been down there in a minute. Is the debris collection, is that moving along?
So with respect to debris collection, that seems to be a hit or miss sort of situation. Those businesses and landowners, for that matter, who made rapid efforts to get the mud, inventory, fixtures, other finishes and so forth removed. By and large, that stuff was removed fairly soon after the event. Those folks who were a little bit behind for whatever reason, there are some debris piles that are still accumulating here and there, and some of that may be new construction material, but that's pretty doubtful. And there are some businesses that have made very little progress to date, and there are mechanisms to kind of prod them along as well. And we're working every way we can to try and get the aesthetics part taken care of. But what really matters is that we do so in a safe manner, and security is going to become a concern during the construction process. So illumination, things like that, are things we're advocating for as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Reverend, welcome.
I'm Sarah Herbert. I'm the Dean of the Cathedral of All Souls, and wanted to come to hear what y'all were talking about this evening about historic properties. And I just had a couple of things. First, a question. We learned today in the Village Association meeting of an early assistance meeting that you could request through the city. And I knew that the scope of this was sort of like help in, here's my project, what kind of permitting, how do I do, all this sort of thing. Have y'all heard about?
Yes, you can go onto our development services website, just go on ashevillent.gov, and
Mhm.
go to the navigate to the development services page, and there's a way to sign up on that page. It's just a scheduling thing, so you should get an email back from our staff.
Well, my question was really, are any of y'all involved in that?
I am.
Okay.
If it's related to a historic district, yeah.
Okay.
So what they do is they get info from the person who submits the application. You tell people what disciplines you want in the room.
Mhm.
And even if somebody doesn't put my name on there or say historic or something, our staff knows to invite you to those meetings. So,
Okay.
so I've already got one this week and one next week for Hardee's and McDonald's. So you can submit that online anytime. There's no cost during this time for those meetings. Is my understanding as of today. So yeah. But if you can't find it or something, just send me an email and I can try to help you.
I appreciate it. We are in the process of shopping around for our, the contractor and general contractor, and then we're putting together a committee for the rebuilding, because there's not one of our buildings that wasn't affected. And as we look to rebuild, I'm trying to help my people understand we're not hitting the reset button. We need to build back better, right? Now, part of that for us and a lot of others is, as we are looking to build back better, all of our systems have been completely demolished, right? And including, all of our HVAC units, the electrical panels, all those things were completely flooded out. And so we're going to want to be able to build back and not only be, of course, more energy efficient and all that, but see about the placement of these things, right? And so placing them on the ground might not be the greatest solution, right?
I think you're actually even allowed per flood standards to put them on the ground, which is why you see some elevated units down there. They're not particularly attractive, but
Yeah.
I think one of the things we talked to Robert Griffin about was maybe doing, gosh, this was when I came to the Merchants Association meeting, which was like 400 years ago, or
Well, and also, I mean, I do know also being a church, we have different way, you know, I mean, we don't have a lot of the same standards, which does not always work in anybody's favor, in my opinion. So we want to build back in a way that is not only sustainable, but that enhances, and I don't want folks coming after me to have to deal with some of this stuff if we can lessen the impact of what we can do in the future around our systems and stuff like that. So any way that we can do that. I'm also going to be working with Interfaith Power and Light to come look at our campus for energy. Do we need to look at, review geothermal? Do we need to review, do we need to look at digging a well? You know, do we need to look at all of those different things? And again, I want us to be thinking in a forward way, and also want us, because of our position, to hopefully build back in a way that maybe we could be a help in the face of stuff like this to the rest of the village, because we do sit up higher, right? And so it would be nice for us to maybe be able to be proactive and energy producing, and, you know, have systems that are functioning when everybody else isn't. So just to let you all know, that's where I'm coming from as we're looking at this.
Sure, and whenever you guys land on a contractor, you know, I'm here as a resource anytime related to your design standards, et cetera, you know, just reach out to me. I know that for a church, it's particularly challenging from a mechanical, electrical functioning, because you've got to figure out where's the ductwork go, you've got all the decorative woodwork and all the things, so I realize that's going to be a challenge for you guys too, so that's not my area of expertise, but I'm sensitive to that. You guys have a lot to figure out, but believe me, you don't have to just rely on the early assistance meeting, and you or your contractor, whoever, can reach out to me anytime if you have questions, if you want me to come out and look at something like in person, more than happy to do that.
I appreciate that.
I don't know if this information is on the website, but what we're gonna talk about, resiliency standards.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That on the,
we probably
we could
could
probably
link
put it on
to
the
all this.
website and maybe create a file, because, so I've also been a planning attorney, so I've never had the occasion to read our flood protection ordinance before. When you read it, it's very complicated, and at first, you know, I was reading that there's a variance for historic structures, but legally it didn't make sense to me, because basically all the rest of the ordinance said, you don't build back to the same. You can't. But because historic structures are also protected under federal law, they have this compromise. But the FEMA, we should put, there's the FEMA guidance on variances or this exception for historic structures, which is really helpful, because it says there's two ways you can do it. You can just exempt them here and say they're exempt, or you can do what we do, which is go through a variance process, which allows us to try to get some conditions, like to the extent possible, doing the things you're saying, trying to put campus systems up in the roof. We did 14 Riverside Drive, which is down in the River Arts District. That's a city-owned building, and I was trying to remember what we renovated that, but we were doing something with the lease, and I was like, well, why the heck aren't all the systems up there? And then it's like, because when we renovated it, we tried to make this, I guess, flood-proof as possible. So there's this kind of information, and I think your role, it's one thing to come to this commission, when you're out in the community and you're saying, well, we've gotten this information and this is what we're doing, you can spread it, so spread the word.
And
Has been doing too.
well, and that's the beauty of being in the Biltmore Village Association, is that we do try and do that, because you don't want one thing open in the village, right? You want everybody to try and come back as closely as possible and support one another, because that makes everybody thrive, you know? And I'm just very grateful that we're standing up a committee to do this, because I tell people, I'm supposed to be the souls part of this, right? I'm not the building part of this, but I'm glad that people are stepping up to do this.
Yeah, we're here as a resource for you as far as, city staff, and if you have questions, reach out. I think most of what I've seen in my experience is driving
So with respect to the resiliency standards, I tried to watch the informational video on the agenda. I'm not sure if anyone else was successful with that or not, but it was a broken link evidently. So I was, certainly interested and intrigued to see what that might be, but my suggestion would be that you all, talk about it whenever you feel like it. The resiliency standards, yeah, and really give that considerable review and think about the real world effects in that private industry may not be able to finance these measures. And if that were to happen, we could end up in a blighted situation or an extenuated situation with a lot of vacancies in any number of historic districts, certainly, but we're, yeah, and I mean, sometimes, this is bigger than me, this is bigger than this body, but occasionally the stormwater system backs up and we flood from the stormwater in the district. And it has to do with the diameter of the pipes and the pressure of the water in the creeks and rivers. And it's a really major league decision to move forward with something like this. And I think that due consideration is being given, and certainly discretion is in your hands. But I would suggest that this be tabled indefinitely while people make a recovery. And when Alex and I had a very frank conversation, I told her if there were rules to be implemented at this point in time, I'm certain that the community would be feeling like they had been kicked while they were down. And I think that would be a gross misstep on our part to jump into something at this point in time. And especially as so many people are affected by this tragedy, I do think that if it were past months and months ago and it just so happened that we had something like this happen, then we'd be having a different conversation. And as you all give this the due consideration that it warrants, there may be properties that over time these standards are going to be met, and it'll be more of a checkerboard kind of situation rather than a wholesale cleaning of the slate and kind of changing things now when, again, a lot of folks are cash poor, maybe asset rich, and waiting on insurance companies to pay pennies on the dollar for some of the claims that are going to be made. So there's pretty significant real-world effects for those of us whose livelihoods, myself included, are connected to the success of the village. Thank you.
So I didn't prepare a formal presentation or anything on this either. I just kind of hope that you all had time to read through the standards. They're all pretty common sense things. Elevating buildings is probably the most extreme kind of approach to flood mitigation or housing resiliency. We have had
And Janice, this one's directed toward you more so than everyone else, but I think it should be thought about as we discuss this in the coming months, maybe year. In many instances throughout the city, the property line is the front facade of buildings, and some of these measures may require a series of encroachment agreements between the property owners and the city in the city's right-of-way in order to put forth a feasible plan of action, such as a floodgate. And by way of example, this one happens to be in the village, but I think a lot of this would be true for downtown and elsewhere, where Lululemon is located at the corner of Boston Way and Kitchen Place. That building, from my understanding, essentially the outer wall is the property line, according to the surveys that I've seen and so forth. And so were we to have to install some sort of flood barrier there or temporary measure in order to do so, the sidewalk would be impacted in a fairly significant way along that corridor. And I think the same is true for many other buildings in the vicinity. Some lots, it's pretty straightforward and easy. Like Alex mentioned, one that we actually involved with, Two Swan. It had a pre-existing hydrostatic wall, which was designed to withhold pressure, and then a barrier wall that could be deployed rapidly, aluminum and all that stuff. And so that one was one of those that had already been brought up to the prior standards under FEMA maps and so forth, and it was a more modern building. So there are some other effects that may not jump out to us here and today as we talk about this, but the encroachment agreement thing alone could be fairly substantial work as we roll this out into the future in order to be able to protect the buildings in a way that makes sense and to keep them structurally sound.
Yeah, I'll be interested in talking to you more details. That's what I'm trying to do. So, but the details, so as I said, I'm kind of just learning about this variance process. And I think you have to understand that first before you adopt the guidelines. So if we have these guidelines adopted, define where my brain has been going, then you would, all right, so the whole reason you get the variance is so that you say, I can't meet the flood standards because my historic character, the HRC won't approve it, or my historic character will be deemed that I'm not historic anymore. But I'm thinking if some of these standards are adopted, then the HRC is saying, we do think that if you follow these standards, you're meeting the historic standards. Now, and so therefore, you'd have to do what was allowed by the standards versus asking for a variance and say, I'm doing the best I can. If that makes sense. The other thing is, say there was a standard, you said elevation is one of the most extreme things, but say one building in the historic district chooses that, is able to do that. But then, what if all of them are, and then you say, well, that's the standard everybody should have to lift it up to. And maybe my head is just going, but then it's like, what happens to the overall character of the historic district itself? It was never on stilts, it was never, you look through some of these, so these are complicated. And probably, and that's probably why right away, FEMA said we have to have this exemption. And it can either be an outright exemption, or I do think this variance one is preferable. But I'd be interested in hearing what merchants think about the variance process. There are times people feel like variance is a big deal to go through, but I think this particular one is not meant to be a very onerous process. But you have thoughts on it?
So what I'm hearing by and large is that some people are looking for guidance, and I would certainly encourage you all to, especially staff, if this other measure is adopted, which I think it will be, to point to these guidelines or potential standards, and allow for someone to have a place to hang their hat. And I fully participated in a roundtable here locally and showed some measures that were taken, but some of these are pretty significant investments, and folks are just simply unable to do it. I mean, I would be hesitant to guess, but I know of one other property owner when something like this came up. It was like $35,000 just for a flood wall that was like maybe 6 feet wide to be designed, approved, installed, And what we call in the development business soft cost engineering is a substantial fee, right? And then you get your architecture piece of it as well in order to make it so that it somewhat blends in when it needs to. And I see these things around town and when I travel, and there's artful ways to do this. And, you know, sometimes people are looking for a place to lay the blame. Well, I follow the city's rules or whatever the case may be. And ultimately, you know, maybe that's warranted or not, but I do think that there's some really interesting things there. I saw some photographs in the manual where the buildings had maybe lattice type foundation coverings previously to make the piers or whatever, and then someone laid in some ornamental brick to disguise some of the elevation aspects of things, and that was a pretty plausible thing that allowed for water to flow in and out, and I think that was maybe in New Bern or a place that experiences this stuff more frequently than we do, thankfully. And you know, that's where I think some folks maybe just kind of go, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to ask the city. And that's totally normal to do so, look for authority. But again, I feel like we should be very, very prudent in adopting new rules now as we're working through this tragedy.
Well, I think just as demonstrated by the last 10 minutes of discussion, there's a lot of different factors at play. Like this would be impossible for us to just not really manage. And obviously, if you read the intro, they recommend that these be tailored to their specific historic district, which probably are not all the same. And Biltmore Village, one of the things that I've been thinking about is that most of the building footprints are very tight. So if somebody did want to elevate your building, yeah, the power, you might have challenges with meeting ADA requirements to get access to your furniture. It's just going to be very site dependent, and I think that is just going to take a lot more analysis on our end to understand like what we might be looking at in terms of impacts to the historic heritage district, balancing that against, and was talking about like costs, you know, because like that's another thing is like while the applicants or properties have to demonstrate to the board of adjustment that they're being compliant for this to the extent possible, if they're required to do something like default, it's going to be a lot more expensive than default. So what you normally say, which is it's the cost, right? So it could create some challenges for people that we definitely during this do not want to create. And I think it's just going to take us, looking at it carefully over time and you having adequate time in people's brain space and energy to engage with us on it from the community before we even as like I guess it like to one thing that Annie was saying is that standards are a pact between the commission and the community, right? So like so anyway, but we didn't take action on the adopting the one, so we've kind of combined the two, but we should go back to the discussion of, so it would be agreement to adopt the provision to allow streamlined and expedite the CA process. Mr. Mitchell had mentioned the 180 days. I can't think of, so adopting guidelines is
I'll revise that to the greatest extent possible under state law.
well, I can't think of the state law. The guidelines are, adopting guidelines are fully within the purview of the Historic Resources Commission. So the statutes just say, when there's a commission, you shall adopt guidelines that make sure there's continuity with the historic district. And so this one is, you're adopting a standard about what's going to be minor work versus major work in an emergency situation. And so if you
think you should praise whatever God you may believe in as far as keeping the water out. It's just impossible. Unfortunately, we're coming off of a reservoir. We would have to have hundreds of acre feet, some sort of reservoir built elsewhere to handle that. And even then, it's just, I don't think that's feasible, unfortunately. And I think I learned during all of this that the church had a basement. And who would have known? And there are a few other little cellars and things like that that had, water come in places that it hadn't been seen in living memory when the groundwater takes on. But yeah, I'm all for giving a lot of discretion to Alex. And again, if she's uncomfortable, what I understood from the discussion was, or staff for that matter, was that she can kick it up to you guys if it's bordering on that minor work to major work. Yeah. And I don't even want to tie it to a dollar figure, because that could be arbitrary when you think of some of the larger buildings versus some of the more modest buildings as well. So I think that she's got the discretion, experience, and attitude to help us where we need it, and soon.
You can say as amended if you do want to. That's true. You can pass it and say as amended. So, so I'm going to, what's written on the staff report, I'm just going to be clarifying that's applications or emergency-related applications that will be during the declared states of emergency for up to a period of 180 days after the emergency has been lifted. And then, of course, if you want to go longer, then we can talk about it. Yeah, does anybody want to comment? Well, we're going to write it so that if there's another emergency, it's on the books. So, we're not making it, it's written as Hurricane Helene, but hopefully it will stay as, when there's a declared emergency, this kicks in. And we put this and then. Yeah, well, that we could have probably, that was probably.
So I'm going to make a
Emergency
motion.
may come again, and so I'd rather write it this way. What I was going to say is that,
it does
so one thing we learned from COVID, so fees and charges manual, it used to, well, the reason we can waive fees related to building and planning is because the state said we can. But normally, our fees and charges manuals, the city council says, these are the fees. And usually the fees say only council can waive them, but after COVID, at least building permits put a provision of fees and charges manual that said when there's an emergency declared, the city manager can waive building-related fees, but not. So, long story short, it's just good to try, when you're writing something that's going to be within part of the standard, to try to make it just.
Can I message that to the neighborhood? I don't think you might notice that.
They're only, for a while, they're only accepting, I think, like emergency or yeah, I meant building permit related. At first, they weren't, so part of this whole flood thing is you have to determine whether something is substantially damaged, impaired, requires substantial improvement, and they were not granting building permits until that process. They were granting.
I think the only thing that really needs to be added is maybe, since it's not necessarily just the hurricane, just the state of emergency thing, but like making sure that, I guess these ones that are being reviewed are like directly related to what the state of emergency is for. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what she, that's what Janice was saying.
I think just add a bullet point that says
Again, the practical effect is you're not going to see that many applications, and the staff has the discretion to kick it up to you all regardless, is what I understood earlier. And they're going to be able to tell pretty quickly whether or not somebody's trying to add a porch or get their, yeah, I wouldn't try to get into it that much. I'd just say knock it out, get her to have the discretion and move on. And the quicker the better, because all of a sudden in the next 30 days, we're going to be queued up. And if I heard we're not meeting in December, people are going to be pulling out what little hair we have left.
So I'm going to make a motion.
Do it.
I move to adopt the addendum to the local historic district design standards to allow scopes of work to be reviewed administratively via minor work application during declared states of emergency. Yeah, for work related to that state of emergency, but not an additional, and with the following exceptions: new construction of primary structures, accessory structures and additions, demolition or relocation of historic structures, replacement of architectural features where there will be change from the original, fences in front yards in Montfort and Downtown Park, solar panels on portions of roof or other areas facing rights of way, any other scope of work that staff determines more substantial visual impact or alters the historic area.
All in favor? Aye. And I was a friendly amendment to my own motion.
During declared states of emergency and for a
And
period
the-
of up to 100 days, or up to 100
As
days
stated by
after.
legal counsel.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Are you done?
Well, no, I just want to go back to the
Start.
resilience design standards. Did you all review them? Do you have questions? Like,
Yeah, it seemed like that there were things that it's big meetings, lots of people talk about
Yeah.
how FEMA's going to redraw the flood maps, or the city's going to adopt higher review floodplain ordinance.
floodplain ordinance is being reviewed, but it's not, it's just because it's like not right now what they are in compliance with that, but it's not consistent with itself or.
Right, yeah,
Right.
rules information kind of.
I don't think there's not going to be a new base flood elevation, or FEMA's not going to redraw the maps.
I thought they were reviewing all the time, from the state.
I thought, it's my understanding they do it like every 7 years or so, and I don't think we had any expectation
They were
that that's going to happen like soon or whatever, but.
The maps were way off. They figured they didn't put enough, that they didn't, that they
Came
need
to
to
the
be
foot of the
redone.
church, the 1,000-year floodplain
Exactly.
on the dot.
No matter what happened, that it wasn't.
Yeah.
For this.
So it's my understanding that the flood maps that are currently effective were adopted within the last several years.
Right.
I've not personally reviewed that, so that's all scuttlebutt as well. But I do think that at some point in the future, that will be revisited. In the last year or so, and I said NCGS earlier, I was thinking of general statutes. I meant the USGS. And they've come out with some new flood inundation mapping software. In the last 18 months or so, I had the opportunity to meet with a guy from the Spartanburg office, and it was fascinating software. But what he was telling us at the time, and the Biltmore Company, myself, and others were present, was that this is a work in progress at best. And, like any computer software, we've got to get data points on specific events in specific periods of time in order to do any sort of predictive service. And I could foresee that having some long-term interaction with the FEMA maps and things of that nature as well. But the legacy Swananoa River at Biltmore Gauge and I are very good friends over the last 10 years. And this new product was not very functional with our computer network. So in real time when we needed it, we couldn't access it. So.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
She's back. With the gavel in hand. Oh,
And thank you all. I did my term here.
yeah, thanks for coming.
Some of these
We're
meetings,
gonna,
like Alex was saying,
want to give
during,
you support.
during COVID, oh my gosh, some of those meetings, hours on Zoom, the camera looked